What's up, guys? It's Thursday here on behalf of the XBL Party Podcast, and today I'm going to be reviewing the game Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning on the Xbox family of consoles. This game released on the Xbox One and Xbox Series family of consoles on September 8th, 2020, with a price tag of $39.99 US. It was developed by Kaiko and published by THQ Nordic. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is a remastered version of the hit action RPG that originally released back in February 2012. This is an action RPG that puts the player in the shoes of a mortal known as the Fateless One. This Fateless One is the only one in the world who ends up being classified as not having a predetermined destiny or end. Not only can they change their own destiny, but they are able to alter the destiny of others around them. During the introduction cutscene to the game, the Fateless One gets killed in battle and is revived within the experimental Well of Souls by the gnome scientist known as Fomerus Hughes. It is thought that this is the reason why the player's character does not have a predetermined destiny. Soon after the character's revival, the facility where the Well of Souls resides is attacked by a group known as the Tuatha Daon, an evil race of elven-like humanoids, led by their new king named Gadflo, that are a subsect of the immortal Winter Fae. The Tuatha Daon are convinced that they are the only race that deserves to exist, and so they end up being the root cause of the Great War, which is also called the Crystal War, against the other mortal races. Due to the unique nature of not being bound by fate, the Fateless One becomes entangled in the Crystal War and is seen as the only one who can stand up to King Gadflo and his army of immortal elves. As I mentioned before, Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is an action RPG where the combat feels very fast and fluid. The game's combat primarily revolves around combos, attack chains, and the timing of button presses. It also includes a fate system which allows the player to fill up the fate bar during combat, which when filled lets the player activate Reckoning mode, which is essentially a slow motion mode that increases the player's damage significantly and allows the player to quickly take out enemies. The mode lasts as long as it takes for the bar to fully deplete or when the player decides to fate shift an enemy, which allows the player character to perform a brutal finishing move and gives the player a chance to increase the amount of experience they receive by rapidly pressing a specific face button. Other than the combat, the game also includes 5 distinct regions, 4 playable races to choose from, and 3 different class trees, Warrior, Mage, and Rogue, along with 22 abilities per tree. The player receives 3 ability points per level and can place them into any tree they want at any point in time, which allows the player freedom to either follow a specific class path or combine any of the 3 classes together. It's also important to take note that this version of the game includes all the DLC that was released throughout the original game's lifespan. Not only that, but the studio actually released a brand new DLC known as Fatesworn, which added 6+ hours of content to the game and a compelling story that concludes the game. Just a heads up, this DLC is actually sold separately and will be covered in more detail in a separate video. Finally, with regards to the achievements in this game, the game includes a total of 62 achievements for a total of 1,000 gamer score. Once again, this is another game where the achievements are made up of a mixture of story-based, collectible-based, gameplay-based, and even some miscellaneous achievements. The game includes your standard fare of achievements such as completing the game on certain difficulties, completing certain quests, killing a certain type of enemy a specific number of times, and even achievements related to the crafting progressions, but it also includes a few random achievements such as speaking to someone without any clothes on, which is kind of funny. Thankfully, as with most open world games, the player is free to revisit most of the areas of the game at any point in time, so there are only a few missable achievements. Manic Pixie Dream Elf, The Harder They Fall, Out of Your League, A Wink and a Smile, and Destiny Dominated achievements. Those are the ones that are the few missable ones. Overall, Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is still to this day a solid experience, and it was great to be able to revisit it with a little bit of a facelift along with some minor updates. The sheer amount of content for the price this makes is really an amazing deal, as the base game can take anywhere between 50 to 80 hours to complete, and then you also still have the 2 DLCs which were originally released for the game way back when, plus the newly added Fatesworn DLC, each of which are about 5 to 10 hours long. Personally, I don't see any of the new additions or changes to the base game, other than a minor update to the visuals, but this game looked and played awesome when originally released back in 2012, so this is honestly an amazing deal. The main story is quite interesting and unique, something that I've never really seen in other games before, but the game includes an immense amount of side content. What's really cool is that this game seems to draw heavy inspiration from the Elder Scrolls series, which makes sense as the head designer for Oblivion worked on this game, which is something you notice with some of the factions this includes. Such as the Travelers, which are essentially the Thieves Guild, while the Warsworn are very similar to the Fighters Guild. The combat also makes me think of games like Dragon Age Inquisition and Witcher 3. The game isn't all that old, but it definitely still holds its own in today's gaming space. Plus, the release of this remaster makes me hopeful for a sequel, as I feel like this series deserves a second chance. With that being said, I would highly recommend a purchase of this game, as the price you pay versus the amount of content you get is highly appealing. I've always said that the amount of content doesn't necessarily justify a purchase, but the quality of content you get here on top of the quantity would please any RPG fan. The main story alone would probably take only around 10 to 15 hours to finish, but just like every other great RPG, this game offers a ton of side quests and many opportunities to explore this vast and interesting world. On top of that, you have the 2 DLCs that were released with the original game and the new Fatesworn DLC, which can enhance your experience even further, although this DLC is sold separately unless you buy the Fatesworn edition, as I mentioned earlier. Most games these days opt for content over substance, and while not everything in this game is equally interesting, it's definitely enough to warrant checking it out, especially if you're a fan of action RPGs. If you've enjoyed this review, please feel free to like and subscribe and check out the rest of the content from the XBL Party podcast. As always, thanks for watching and keep slaying those achievements. This has been Stereo Exclusive, bringing you another game review, and I hope to catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one.